Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Song as Citizenship, and we are live to the web through the Hampsong Foundation website via Dave Shaw, who's here. Thank you so much, Dave. I have the pleasure of introducing Thomas Hampson, who's just come in from Seattle, where you did a Beyond Liberty performance.
That's right. And
we're excited to have you here for 3 days of classes and talks and symposia, but really sort of exploring 3 separate aspects of a joint project we're entering with the Hampsong Foundation to do new research into song, to outreach to K-12 organizations, to bring song into the public schools as a vehicle for teaching language arts, for teaching history, for teaching social studies, and then, of course, the artistry of song itself, with Thomas leading a masterclass tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Stamps, which is open to the public. But just welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's nice to have a microphone. Sorry about being late. Didn't realize we were on the other side of Ann Arbor. It's fantastic. It's great to be here. No, I'm not a lot to say. I think we're going to have a wonderful conversation this afternoon. I am incredibly excited about our partnership, our ideas, our working together, our moving forward. I want you to tear apart, rebuild in your minds Song of America and the Hampsong Foundation website. Please, if you haven't been on the website, go have a great time and look around. I'm also speaking to people on the net watching us here. Hampsongfoundation.org and songofamerica.net or SOA.net. I think you'll be quite amused, enthralled, impressed, and surprised at the depth of the resources to understand song as citizenship. I love that title. I love the art of democracy. I love all of that. having a great time. It's wonderful to be here. I see some colleagues that I'm looking forward to dinner, and for all of you that are missing pre-Super Bowl activities, God bless.
So we wanted to start off talking about song with some song. So we've invited actually three teams of performers to sort of bookend our conversations today. So we'll have performances at the beginning, end, and the middle, and we're going to start off with Fernando Grimaldo and Natalie Scherer performing In Flanders Field, music by Charles Ives, text by John McCrae. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Certainly no better way to kick off this event than with Charles Ives, one of the definitive American composers, and one I think who really reaches across the traditions in the New World and the Old World to create an original voice. And if there's anyone who saw song as citizenship, it was certainly Charles Ives, who himself considered, I think, running for office and just was very involved in government at the time, and really saw the art of music as having a substance, communicating something vital about the human condition. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is song as citizenship, as an act of our humanity, an act of how to live together, how to be together as a society, as a community, to express who we are, to grant the spotlight to different voices that maybe have been marginalized in our culture, that can be brought out and be recognized as fully human through the art of song. And that's sort of what we're aiming for. I just wanted to share a little bit about the outline of today's event. You have a program But just from the top level view, we're going to have these 3 performances, bookending 2 parts of discussion about art song and art song research. The first will be 3, what we're calling lightning talks, about 10 minutes or so, to talk about specific topics, and faculty here at the School of Music, Theatre, and Dance, and a partnership between Carolyn Helton, one of our professors, and Christie with the Hampsong Foundation. And then we'll have Louise Toppin talking about an amazing new database looking into African American art song. And I will tell a little bit about the Star-Spangled Banner, because I can't go anywhere without talking about the Star-Spangled Banner. It's required of me. And then in part 2, we'll have a round table. It's more of a long table over there. And most of the audience will get up and join me on stage at that point. But we have just an illustrious panel of scholars and performers. And I think that's it's much of what I'm really excited about today. And I have sort of this subtitle up here, Performance and Scholarship and Conversation. And that's, I think, what we're really aiming for is not to see research and performance as 2 separate streams, but rather as one roaring river that sort of takes us into a deeper understanding of our humanity. This is just the overview of the 3 talks, as I said, in the New Directions part. And I wanted to just start off with a little bit of an introduction, and then I'll weave into the case of the Star-Spangled Banner. And the introduction has a little bit to do of why I love having Thomas Hampson around, and just how he affected my own research into song and my own teaching for a class called Musicology 140. It's the 2nd course of our musicology core curriculum here at the School of Music, Theatre, and Dance. And it's a survey of sort of music in our own lives in our own time as an introduction to music research. So rather than starting with medieval monks, we sort of start here in Ann Arbor looking at, in this case, campus songs we've been doing this term. But then I do a chronological survey, and one of the things I talk about are the earliest composers in the history of the United States. And the earliest piece we have is this one, or one of the set. This is a manuscript from the Library of Congress by Francis Hopkinson, who was actually a student at the University of Pennsylvania in 1759. And this is a song called My Days Have Been So Wondrous Free. And here's the lyric. And I'd been teaching this for years in the class, and there was sort of this novelty recording that I had, not very good, and I felt obliged to have this in my class because it was the first song, but I was always sort of embarrassed by it a little bit because it had sort of a trite text, and just didn't really, it wasn't like Charles Ives. It didn't have that substance that I really wanted to sell people on in my class. American music is not like second to European music. It's part of the same tradition. It's powerful. It speaks to us in the same ways. But I started with this and this recording that didn't really convey that to me. I mean, my days have been so wondrous free, the little birds, careless ease and trees. And so it's just sort of pastoral text. And I had to say I would sort of go through this section as quickly as possible. I would show the original publication that came out a few years later, about 20 years later, 1788, or like 30 years later. So the 7 songs for harpsichord, and even this was a little embarrassing because there are actually 8 songs in the 7 songs for harpsichord. Because when you engrave your title, he wrote another song and he put it in there, and it was too expensive to redo the title, so he just slipped the 8th one in there. And then he had the audacity to dedicate the whole thing to His Excellency George Washington, Esquire. It's sort of Hopkinson liked his role as a sort of being there with the Revolution and ascribed, and his name often comes up in the history of the flag. He writes an early parody of the Anacreontic song in the history of the Star-Spangled Banner, and he makes a couple of claims in this dedication. He says, "I cannot, I believe, be refused the credit of being the first native of the United States who has produced a musical composition." So he's saying, I'm number 1. I was first to this party. And then he says, if this attempt should not be too severely treated, others may be encouraged to venture on a path yet untrodden in America, and the arts in succession will take root and flourish amongst us. So here was this grand claim to be founding an artistic, tradition in the New World, and it had this sort of song that was there. And then I ran across this performance with Thomas Hampson and Craig Rudenberg. This is probably not the ideal recording situation. Thomas was performing, I think, at a Borders bookstore. But let me just play a little bit of this. And this performance changed my mind about this song and about Hopkinson. So this for me shows, yeah, bravo. So this for me shows the importance of performance to history, to really having an artist take the past and bring it into the present and bring it to life for us anew. And this, meant a lot to me to see an artist like Thomas Hampson, like Rittenberg, taking this song, which I had seen as silly, seriously, led me to think about, well, maybe I should be taking this song maybe a little bit more seriously. So I looked into it, learned a little bit more about Francis Hopkinson, and it turns out that Francis Hopkinson has another little sort of factoid about him that's quite interesting. He's the one musician to have been a signer of the Declaration of Independence from 1776. We have a whole list of signatures at the bottom, and of course we have the ubiquitous John Hancock, which gives us that phrase, that idiom. We have Thomas Jefferson, we have John Adams, and we have Benjamin Franklin, and we have Francis Hopkinson. So this sort of to put the text in a little bit different light for me. I mean, if you take this, my days have been so wondrous free, from a person who was willing to put his life on the line as an enemy of the British Empire to claim his freedom. So to have a wondrous free childhood, to grow up in a country, in a space that emphasized to him what a gift it was to be free, and then to claim that freedom through the Declaration. So this whole notion of being wondrous free was no longer just a silly little pastoral claim, but a pretty profound claim about something fundamental to the freedoms that I enjoyed 200 and almost 50 years later. So these little birds, the idea of flying with careless ease and being blessed, oops, did I just move that? This idea of a tear being shed and joining a stream, of a single breath becoming part of a gale, also took on a new resonance. So here's a single man, a musician, who signed his name to the Declaration of Independence, who put his family, his wealth, everything he had on the line to start a new life. And this act of a single person, this single tear becoming part of a stream, becoming part of a river, a flood of a new ideal, the single breath becoming part of a gale, right? That an individual can then make a difference in the world, really made this whole song take on an entirely new resonance. And it was just because I stopped seeing this text as something, sort of isolated and silly on its own, and saw it as part of a historical moment, as part of a larger claim, that we can tell our history through the song. And then I revisited Hopkinson's claims. I cannot, I believe, be refused the credit of being the first native who's produced a musical composition. And if this attempt should not be too severely treated, I may have founded an art's life, a depth of meaning and a humanity that hopefully will take root and flourish amongst us in this new nation. So I think it puts artists and puts song and puts music sort of in the core of the project of freedom, in the core of the project of being American, of being human. So song then becomes a kind of social force. And Hopkinson's, little scribbles really take on a profundity that informed me actually about the power of what I was doing as a historian, but also what I hoped my students would aspire to do in the world, to follow the path that Francis Hopkinson had set. This has led me in the same course through looking at, what is American music, to asking that question. And if there was a piece that I knew was definitively American, it must be the national anthem. And so it was in this course that I started playing Jimi Hendrix's version of the national anthem from Woodstock in August of 1969, and asking my students, well, what does this mean? I was always trying to look not like an old professor, but a cool professor. I'm not sure it works, but I still try. But then they would ask me, well, where did this song come from? And where was the music come from? And these questions that actually we take pretty much for granted in this country. We don't actually look into this history. We sort of are so comfortable in some ways with the claims and our ideology that we don't actually interrogate it very, very deeply. And so this led to a whole project that I did with Jerry Blackstone and some of our students. We have a recording with 37 versions of the Star-Spangled Banner. It's great listening. You've just got to check it out. It can't be believed until you've sat through the whole thing from end to end. But it has the original versions, and the really remarkable thing about it is in my research, I found over 200 sets of lyrics that are sung to the melody we know as the Star-Spangled Banner. We only remember this one, and it's a complete freak accident that we do. But it's part of a larger tradition called broadside balladry. And this was a very common practice, really going back to England and to Europe in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. And in some ways it continues today on the internet with people posting sort of alternate lyrics to well-known melodies. So if you think back to the 18th and 19th centuries, everybody sang in church, and you didn't have recordings. And if you wanted music, you needed to make it yourself. And so people felt very comfortable singing. So a lot of people sang. And one of the things that most newspaper issues had was on the front page, on sort of the left-hand column, would be a poetry corner or song corner, a lyrical corner, and they would be either poetry about the day's events or actually lyrics. And the lyrics would indicate the title of the tune to which the words were to be sung. And it's often said about broadside ballads that they carried the news of the day to a sort of illiterate public. So you would have the town crier in the middle of the square, and they would sing out the day's news. And I'm actually pretty skeptical of this claim. If you know, tomorrow morning, if you want to know who won the Super Bowl, you probably would not say, hey, could you sing me a song about the Super Bowl? Because it's a rather slow way to deliver the news. You just want to know like whether San Francisco or Kansas City won. Similar things. You wanted to know who won the War of 1812, like who won the Battle of Baltimore. You said, did we win? Oh, just wait a minute. I'm going to sing you a song. It's 4 verses, but just hold on. That's not the way to get to information. What we do, however, get from song that we don't get from the printed word or just spoken answers to our questions is we get the emotional significance of the word. Right? So the news is not just we won or lost. It's really what are the implications to our nation of winning or losing the Battle of Baltimore. So why Francis Scott Key put those words into a lyric that was imagined from the very beginning as part of a song. It was not a poem that someone else later matched up with a melody. Francis Scott Key in his mind was singing the tune to himself as he did it. And we can show that in part through this. This is the first broadside, if you will. Broadside is a single sheet of paper produced by a printing press. This was one of 1,000 copies of the first edition that was done by a local printer in Baltimore right after the battle. And Francis Scott Key had this printed. He was, a lawyer and a fairly connected individual. He had some means, some wealth, and he wanted to thank the defenders of Fort McHenry, the 1,000 men who stayed in the fort against all odds and really preserved the nation. And so he wrote this poem. He originally called it not the Star-Spangled Banner, but the Defense of Fort McHenry. And he tells a little bit of the story at the top, and then he gives his 4 verses of the song. And in here, he indicates very clearly what the melody is to be. So it's not a poem that someone else later connected with the tune Anacreon. It was intended very much by Francis Scott Key himself. And this is very typical. This was a normal way of communicating ideas to the public and to celebrating and sort of carrying that emotional import of those ideas, trying to convince rhetorically your neighbors and friends about your ideas was to set them not just to a newspaper article and put the text out there, but to actually set them to a melody. So here are 3 other broadsides. A poem on the left, which actually was published here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, I'll talk about in a minute. A song called Columbia and Independence, and a song called Wells and McComas. All 3 of these are sung to the tune you know as the Star-Spangled Banner. And as I said, they're part of really a set of hundreds. If you lined them up from beginning to end chronologically, Francis Scott Key's would be about number 80 of the ones I've located so far. So this is another important thing, is I think Francis Scott Key's text is a game changer in the sense that he brings a new level of talking about, say, the flag and the stars. There's new symbolism that enters the discourse at this time. But in writing his lyric, he was joining a conversation that was already started about the future of this country. The initial broadsides to this, the very first anachronistic lyric that I found from America is actually written by Hopkinson, and it is actually one of those sort of drinking song parodies from early on. It's a comic song. Shortly thereafter, it gets used for songs supporting the French Revolution, because, of course, the French supported our revolution. We, in turn, supported theirs. And there's then our 4th of July songs. Then there's a political song about John Adams called Adams and Liberty. And this is probably the one that, if Francis Scott Key knew a tune to the anachronistic song, it was probably this one, because his family was part of the Federalist Party, as was Adams. And it often is called the first campaign song, but Adams had actually already been elected president. He was just under extreme duress for some questionable acts like the Alien and Sedition Acts at the time. But this is a quote from a newspaper, an editorial from 1799, and it says, "The poets of our country are patriots. In rousing the American people to a sense of their danger, they have been in the advance guard. That they are not wearied in well-doing, almost every public celebration gives abundant evidence. Adams and Liberty should be the commander in this tradition." So this was a very popular tune, and it was used as this patriotic conversation about the future of the country, because they had declared independence, they won independence, they created a constitution. The question now is, what do we do with this? Right? And figuring that out was a matter of public debate, and music was a means of having that conversation, which I think is pretty amazing. So it's this American lyrical conversation starting, in our minds with Francis Scott Key. And, I think one of the things that's interesting to me today is that we tend to think of the national anthem as this immutable sort of sacred object, right? That it has to be done in this traditional way. Jimi Hendrix or Jose Feliciano or probably tonight's Super Bowl performance will be, critiqued for the ways in which it was non-traditional, right? It did something that you weren't supposed to do to the anthem. I assure you there is no traditional way to sing the anthem. People often call Whitney Houston's performance from 1991 the greatest ever. It's in 4/4, and the song is written in 6/4. We often sing it in 3/4. And if you're a musician, going from 3/4 to 4/4 does dramatic things to a piece of music, right? So it's hardly traditional to sing it in a different, to move it from triple to duple time. But if we go back to 1814 and we think of Francis Scott Key and the Chesapeake Bay watching the far superior military ships of the British command sort of bombing for 25 hours a defenseless American fort. The bomb ships of the British had a 3-mile range, and the guns in the American fort had a 2-mile range. So they just parked 2.5 miles from the fort, and nothing would stop them. And for Key, it was sort of a miracle that this had saved. But he looked at a country, and he was thinking, that God preserved us, and he was a very religious man, so that as of the fourth verse is very sincere from him. But he also saw a moment of transition, of transformation, and he was calling for the country to sort of rise up and have pride and defend itself, right? To be sort of a great nation, to pull together and not just be independent states, because we didn't have a military that could defend the country, right? The British had come in, they had burned all the federal buildings of Washington, D.C. to the ground just a month before. So for him, this was a message of hope for the nation. We tend to see it now as a message of empire, but it really is a protest song from 1814. It's really saying, come on guys, let's get it together. Let's have a real nation. And the lyrics that I'm tracing into the later parts of the 19th century also include a lot of protest songs of people recognizing something that was wrong with the country that they wanted to change, and a big one of those was slavery. So you have the tagline in each of those verses, the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's pretty ironic when you have 4 million people enslaved. So there is a version, several versions actually, of abolitionist lyrics that are sung to the tune of the Star-Spangled Banner. And if I could do one thing with our K-12 outreach aspect of this partnership, is to have everybody in the world know, everybody in the nation anyway, know the Star-Spangled Banner text by Key, but also know this text, "Oh Say Do You Hear" by E.A. Atlee, who was a Baptist minister from Battle Creek, Michigan. And this is one of those little left-hand columns from the front page of an abolitionist newspaper called The Signal of Liberty. Does anyone know where The Signal of Liberty was published? Here. This was Ann Arbor, Michigan's abolitionist newspaper. If you know, we have a stop on the Underground Railroad. It's out on Pontiac Trail now. This text was actually published in the Ann Arbor's abolitionist newspaper, and then it was picked up by William Lloyd Garrison and published in the national newspaper, The Liberator. But it is a text. "Oh, say do you hear at the dawn's early light the shrieks of those bondsmen whose blood is now streaming from the merciless lash, while our banner in sight with its stars mocking freedom is fitfully gleaming. Do you see the backs bare? Do you mark every score of the whip of the driver trace channels of gore? And say, doth our Star-Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" To me, it is an incredibly powerful text to sing, and the partnership of that and contrast between that and the and Key's lyric, I think, is profound and really shows us that the question mark that happens at the end of our anthem that we sing at the sports stadium every day like it's an exclamation mark is actually a question mark. And that question is, does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? And the way we answer that is by what we do next, what we do today to make this country live up to the ideals that it was founded on. And that's really where Francis Scott Key, I think, is coming, and why this song is an act of citizenship, why singing this song is an act of citizenship. So I encourage you to sing this song with gusto and to live up and answer its question. Let me turn this over to our next group here to talk about the K-12 partnership with the Hampsong Foundation. So Carolyn Helton and Christie Finn speaking about our songs tell our story using classic song in the K-12 classroom.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. As always, really enlightening. And we've had Mark work with some of our teachers in the Song of America workshops in the past, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration. And we feel very, very welcome here. So thanks to everyone, students, faculty, staff, for being so welcoming to Thomas and I and the Hampsong Foundation. So I just want to say a few words with Carolyn about what we've done so far for K through 12 curriculum development with our Song of America project, which is a project that Thomas has been working on for most of his life, and I'm sure he'll talk about that more later in the panel discussion. What we try to do with Song of America is to move beyond the concert hall and to take song into other spaces, and most importantly into the classroom, where many children today, many students have no music education, or as we discovered on Friday, the 9th grade students at Marygrove are coming in with, no music education whatsoever, and they're hungry for this information. And what we're trying to do with song is use it as a vehicle for intercultural dialogue and understanding, and that goes for within your own nation, with understanding American history and culture. And as Mark was just saying, the emotional significance that comes with a song can be used to develop empathy for people of the past and for our neighbors, to understand what people have gone through and to become a better citizen because of it. So what we have done is we've developed on our website, which I hope many of you will check out if you're not already familiar with it, is a section that's for educators, for K through 12 educators, also for teaching artists and anyone in the classroom really. We have developed 15 different lesson plans, and each one focuses on a different American song. And they are mostly developed for language arts and English teachers, and especially social studies and US history teachers, so that they can take one song and they can use that to develop a whole lesson. For instance, we have several that go into Langston Hughes and into the Harlem Renaissance period. And we use, this one would be for an AP US history class. And you would use Margaret Bond's song, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, to start a dialogue about Langston Hughes and about the Crisis magazine and the Harlem Renaissance. And that's one of the ways that we try to support teachers so that they can bring music into their classrooms, even if they're not music teachers. And another thing that we've been doing since 2015 is teacher workshops with K through 12 teachers, where we have them come for a day or 2 days, and we talk about song, we have live performances, we get into some of the topics in these lesson plans, and we work with them so they could start using these lesson plans in their classroom. And Carolyn has been one of our wonderful Song of America master teachers working with these teachers. So I would like to turn this over to her so she can talk a little bit about her experience with the teachers and kind of what we do in the workshops.
Good afternoon, and it's a real honor to be in this group of illustrious people talking about this amazing project. The opportunity to speak with teachers who are with our children every single day has been so thrilling, and they are also really hungry for new ways to engage their students. And as anyone who looks around and sees kids with their headphones on all the time, you know that we absolutely need music like we need the air that we breathe, you know. And so if we are taking song to connect with our young people, that's going to be a direct feed into their hearts and souls as they decide how they want to engage with society and with music. So when I go with my colleague Emery Stevens, who is a professor at St. Olaf College now, but he got his doctorate here, yay, go blue. And so Emery and I have been working together since I think it was 2004 about how we open up art, songs, and spirituals by African Americans to a diverse audience of American singers, how we form a community to learn about the repertoire that was marginalized, and also confront the difficult conversations that we have to have that surrounding slavery and crossing the color barrier when you sing in concert. And I also have my musical ancestors to thank for the original permission to do that in recital. George Shirley, Willis Patterson, who was on my doctoral committee, thank you very much. But to learn from them that this music belongs to us as Americans. And so that's the message that Emery and I take into the classroom. First of all, we introduce the idea about what is classic song, the melding of poetry and music and sung, performed by a singer and a pianist. So it's an intimate and powerful communicative experience. And so with those teachers, we do text study of important historical poems. One of the ones that we spend a lot of time on is Ethiopia Saluting the Colors by Walt Whitman. So that is an extremely personal reaction to a certain point in the Civil War. And then we listen and work with, or either Emery sings or we play Thomas Hampson's recording of Harry T. Burleigh's setting of that song. And so we get to hear Harry Burleigh's visceral reaction to this very visceral poem. And then we talk about the historical issues and the emotional issues and how the music can elucidate the dignity of every character in that poem. And then we generally move on to text study of Langston Hughes poems. And one of the most moving experiences we had was when we were working with actually a wide range of music teachers at Carnegie Hall in New York, January 2018, I think it was. Pardon me. And we sang, Emery and I sang a couple of spirituals apiece, and we also sang some settings by Margaret Bonds of Langston Hughes poems. And one of the music teachers said, I've really struggled with how to present classical music to my mostly African American and inner city students. Like, what relevance does it have to their lives? And they said, now I see that I can take this experience, this African American voice of the poet and the musician, and this will speak to them as we present the Harlem Renaissance and bring it alive, because there is no connection. The personal connection is absolutely the way to get people to have that call to action that Mark was talking about. So we have really enjoyed our time working with all sorts of subjects in K through 12 education, and helping the teachers brainstorm how they can use song in all of their subjects. And we were in Cooperstown in 2018 and got to hear Thomas Hampson's Beyond Liberty premiere, which was rather thrilling at Glimmerglass. And it was so exciting to work with the Art Museum and Native American artifacts, as well as spirituals and African American art song, to talk about the three threads of American culture and history, sort of Native American, African American, and European American. and how we can take that and build a community and weave those threads back together through the 21st century. So that is what we've been passionately doing over the last couple of years, and I really hope that with this partnership we can continue that important work.
And so this work is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what we've been doing with Hampsong, and as Caroline said, Thomas and I especially look forward to this partnership with the University of Michigan. So thank you, and please feel free to approach us, and we'll tell you more about our projects. So turn it back over to Mark.
Yeah, I think the implications of the partnership are just starting to explore, but we're certainly happy to have students involved in this work, and one of the ways in which that will happen is my colleague Louise Toppin, who teaches a course in many ways that sort of develops from some of the deep history of the university and Willis Patterson's work and George Shirley's work, but recovering the history of African American and Black American song. Can't remember my password because I'm under pressure. All right, here we go. Let me bring up Louise's presentation. There is a typo in the program. It is not tolls, it is tools.
That's right. Although if you don't use the tools, it's going to take a toll.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Stanford. Thank you. It is an honor to be a part of this panel and be a part of this partnership that we are working on currently. I would like to begin, and I'm going to speak to you briefly on the subject of African American art song and the research tools the exciting research tools that we are developing currently, and the projects that a lot of them that emanate from the University of Michigan and from our two, as Caroline said, our two illustrious colleagues, Willis Patterson and George Shirley, who started so many of us. I too did a doctorate here back in the, I won't say what century, but many of us began with the serious study of this music because of these two scholars performers. I'd like to begin, though, with something that is new. This is a part, don't judge, but it is a part of a rehearsal from yesterday when I was in North Carolina. I'm in the middle of a project to record 52 songs for soprano by Adolphus Hailstorm. He is one of our greatest living composers of African American music and has no recording of his works. He's written several hundred. I have already recorded about half of this, and we are in the midst of the second half. So I'm going to play just a little bit. A lot of the poets that he uses are African American poets, and the reason that it is important to add African American music into the canon of American music is because it gives a specific perspective that is missing. The African American composers are the ones that tell you how the community felt about Martin Luther King's death and some other important seminal events in our history. So I just want you to hear the end. This is the third verse. I apologize for taking a part of a verse, but literally I was sitting down. We weren't planning to record this, and we just popped it on. So here's a minute. I was touched by this piece. beautiful writing and beautiful text setting, and yet we've not heard it. We've not had it recorded. So, as I said, this recording will give the 4 orchestral songs that are songs of love and justice to the text of Martin Luther King. We've already recorded that in Prague. We have done the harp. He wrote 6 pieces for harp and soprano. He wrote 3 for string bass and soprano. He wrote 11 that are string quartet. 1 includes clarinet as a part of that string quartet, some clarinet songs in French. So working with Adolphus, we are representing his output from among his very earliest songs to one of the more recent ones. He wrote a piece for me called Who is Sylvia? That was written for Sylvia Olden Lee, and who is the first African-American coach at the Metropolitan Opera. And it represents a violin style that is a blues violin with a coloratura soprano, which is me, to the text of Shakespeare with a gospel piano. So imagine all of this, and at the very end, you get the wails of the soprano singing high Ds and high Es to end this 7-minute song. So all of that, and one piece with chorus that we're going to do with the women's chorus here will appear on this recording. So I hope you'll enjoy looking for this compilation, but also appreciating this wonderful repertoire that hasn't been previously recorded. Although the innovations of African Americans have received robust scholarship in the areas of vernacular and popular music, such as in blues, jazz, popular, and hip hop, the concert music has received scant attention in widespread scholarly circles. It is hoped that those interested in working in American music, which is heavily engaged in scholarship, would include the heretofore absent voices of African American composers to fully present the story of the American musical landscape. The rationale given for lack of scholarship undertaken are many, and some of them are plausible. Underrepresented. And what does that mean? The existence of the music is under-acknowledged in our standard musical canon. If we don't teach it in schools, how will anybody find this repertoire? The music has largely been ignored by publishers. That is a big problem, so much of this repertoire is in manuscript. The recordings, therefore, if you can't find the music, you only have a manuscript, how are you going to record it? So again, these are valid points, and that is the exciting work that I'm happy to say we're doing something about. Repository for the works is dealing with the fact that there was a center that was the Center for Black Music Research in Chicago that is unstable at this point. So people who have repertoire don't know where to send it. And therefore, the music is ending up a little bit in flux and going to archives throughout the United States. Well, that doesn't make it easy for someone who's interested in studying. So basically, where do you find this music? Although the picture I painted may sound bleak, I think that it is an opportunity. And I'm optimistic that with partnerships such as what we're exploring and other work that is being done in the field, that we have an opportunity to bring this music to the fore. Much has already been done to stimulate interest and eliminate the prohibitive factors. Briefly, I will outline some of the work that has been undertaken over the past few years and leave you with some thoughts on additional work for the future. Work in progress. These are scores of Margaret Bond's. As you can see, they're manuscript scores. I've spent years studying Margaret Bond's work, and I came to it in 1990, I believe it was. I was working with a singer by the name of Charlotte Holloman. And as I was doing my coachings with her in DC, she said, I have some repertoire in my basement. Nobody wants it. Nobody will sing it. Would you be interested? And me, who had spent so much time singing contemporary music, jumped on it, said, sure. She didn't tell me whose music it was. She said, I have manuscripts in my basement. So I went to the basement, and I found 11 manuscript scores of Margaret Bond's. Margaret Bond's was her good friend and the teacher of Ned Rorem, and her father was the doctor of Ned Rorem. So there were all these letters and scores in the basement, and I gasped because they were so beautifully written. I recorded all of them, and since 2000, when the recording came out, that is probably the thing I get the most emails about. Where do I find this music? Song of the season are stunning. Where do we get this? So here's some more I found actually fairly recently. I have 35 of them now that I've collected from around the country, and I've been working with different publishers for several years now. I've worked with Schirmer, Presser, Hal Leonard, and E.B. Marks. And all expressed interest, but we haven't been able to move this forward. I'm happy to say I actually have a publisher now, and these 30-some scores will be in print this summer. So we're finally getting it. Thank you. And just to show you, this is one of the scores that's already done. They're all typeset, ready to go. And it's a shame that a major publisher, although they expressed interest, it's a shame that they didn't take it that next step, because I was just sending emails to all of them. This month I've gotten 10 of them about these scores. And these are not the only ones that I've spent that much time. Excuse me, let me go backward. In addition to working on these, it has been fortunate working with some colleagues here on some other projects because increasing access to this music through anthologies or publication is vitally important to getting people to sing this repertoire. I've been working since I've been here with my colleague Scott Piper, who took the lead on a project, and Caroline Helton and myself and Dean Patterson have all been a part of an anthology that is geared toward college-age students, so that they are, who are showing the most interest, so they're excited and able to get some of this repertoire. So we're working on that, and also I hope this summer that will be published. The third anthology is from myself and Marquita Lister. We've been on a project for several years now of commissioning works that are multicultural response to African American poetry. And this project, as we have about 20 or 30 composers who have written songs expressly for the two of us. Marquita Lister, as an international opera singer, well known for her Aidas and things like that. We were the 2018 Hampsong Prize winner for the American Musicological Society, and so because of that, that anthology will also be published this summer. So 3 new anthologies to get this repertoire out are coming out of Michigan, so I'm very excited about that first step. One other that's coming is a former student of mine is actually creating an anthology for the younger singer. She wants to do something for high school age students with appropriate repertoire. So I'll be working with her this summer on finding and curating that repertoire. Festivals and conferences. This is an important way that people get together and find out about this repertoire. In recent and have a space to talk about the music and the context. What does this all mean? And in recent years, we've had several conferences that include scholars as well as performers, and scholars who are performers. African American Art Song Alliance, Daryl Taylor, who was my buddy here when we were students, happens every 5 years and focuses on songs, and the Hampsong Foundation has certainly been an important partner in that conference. I did a conference here at Michigan in September that, again, the Hampsong Foundation was a part of that conference, and these are important ways of getting people together. In addition, there's some young people in Maryland, at University of Maryland, that are doing a Florence Price festival in August of 2020. And I've been working with them and advising them on putting their panel together so that the work is not only what I'm personally doing or my colleagues are doing, but we're mentoring the next generation to help show them how to do this. I've also been a part of a writing group that's writing Blackness and gender into music historiography. So everybody except me in that group is a musicologist. And I was honored, Naomi's here and was the leader in that group, and I'm honored to have been a performer that was able to give a different voice in terms of what's going on. And they're doing brilliant work of writing about the concert repertoire of African American and helping us to push what needs to be done. Michigan's voice curriculum has taken a bold step and is including African American repertoire as a requirement for undergraduate, graduate, specialist, and doctoral students. That's a big step. And I thank my colleagues and my chair, Scott Piper, for making that bold step. That's one way that we can begin to bring this repertoire into the curriculum. Of course, Michigan also has an African American art song course. It's an unusual place for that, that we have that ability of a course started from Willis Patterson and continued through my teaching of it at this point. But it is a way of teaching our students of the value of this music, the context for the music, and introducing them to so many performers and composers. Recordings, lots of people are now doing recordings of African American music, I'm thrilled to say. My own projects include not only the Hail Stork, but I've done all of the works for soprano by T.J. Anderson, who is the elder statesman of African American composers at this point. He's 91, 92? 91. And so that is done, and it will be released in the summer. And Daryl Taylor and I have done a CD of the chamber works of African Americans, and many works were written for the two of us specifically. We're excited that that should be out in about a year. So we're trying to, again, introduce new composers, encourage some energy, and make sure there are recordings that are out there. We are seeing more dissertations. I've been advising a lot of dissertations on African American composers here as well as elsewhere, which is wonderful. People have written articles on Leslie Adams, who you're going to hear a piece by Leslie, who's here in Cleveland, Ohio, and one of the most prolific song composers of African Americans living today, along with Hail Stork. There's also an article by Robert Owens, and people are beginning to write some of those important monographs, such as the work on Florence Price that was started by Raylinda Brown. That book will be out very shortly. But there's also work on spirituals, and some new research and books are coming out, so that's exciting. There are two projects that I'm very near and dear to my heart that most of you know if you're here in Michigan. Oops. The George Shirley Vocal Competition. Mr. Shirley and I founded this 10 years ago. I can't believe we're at the 10th year this year, 2020. The repertoire for this competition is all African American composers. Students sing art song, spirituals, the African diaspora, and opera arias. And I'm just going to kind of show the gallery, but it is for students of all ethnicities. In addition to sorry, I don't know if I can talk and scroll. We're going to find that out in a second. In addition to the performances, we do master classes, and the master classes are using African American repertoire, but it is taught by people like Mr. Shirley, does a wonderful class. We have Robert Sims, who talks specifically about spirituals. These are actually some of the judges sitting there. There's McCrae Lister. Emery Stevens was in that picture. And we do classes, though, on marketing. How do you market yourself as a singer? How do you, thanks Lenora, I just saw you in that picture. How do you market yourself? And I did a class on what is the repertoire, where do you find it? So we're trying to make sure that the competition is more than you come for 15 minutes and you go away. We are providing an experience that teaches you about this repertoire. I'm proud that University of Michigan, I'm trying to see if I can find the photo, I think that was it. Yes, two of the students in that photo are University of Michigan students. A junior on the left side, and the 1, 2, 3, 4th from the left was the first prize winner, Logan, who was a graduate student. So we're delighted that our students, they're taking the courses, they're entering the competition, and they are succeeding in the competition. We went from an initial $1,000 10 years ago. We now give away $30,000 per year, approximately. So well, this was the other one I was going to show you anyway. So the other project, so I'm delighted that the competition has grown in that way, and it gives students not only an opportunity to learn the repertoire, but a place to use the repertoire. And that's part of the issue is if you just learn something and you don't have a way to use it, then are you going to continue to use it? One of the most exciting things that happened to me last week was I was talking to Tim's diction class, and a young man said to me that he was using an aria that he learned by William Grant Still in his audition packet. That's big to me because that doesn't normally happen. And he said he's getting wonderful reactions as people say, what is this aria? Who is this composer? That's what we want to see happen. That's how it becomes a part of the musical canon. The second project that I was doing, because I realized years ago, well, if they can't find the music, I need to create a way for people to find this repertoire. So I created a database, and I unveiled part one of it in September, and it's got ways to go. And this is one of the many partnerships I hope we can do in the future. But here's what happens when you go to the database. If you know a composer's name, say Bonds, all you have to do is start typing, and if you notice, Margaret Bonds populates on the left. If you don't know a composer's name, and you just know, for instance, you want a poet, Paul, I bet you if I just type Paul Lawrence Dunbar begins to pop up. If you don't know that much, you say, you know what, I'm a soprano. That's all I've got, I'm a soprano. But look at what happens. Pages begin to pop up with repertoire for you as a soprano. Once you click on one of those, oh, and I'll do one other way. Say you know a title, because I saw that somebody's singing, Hoyt's singing, He's Got the Whole World. Let's see if the setting she's doing is the only one. Nope. There are all these settings of He's Got the Whole World in His hand. So if you wanted to sing, she's going to sing it beautifully. But if you wanted to sing a different one, here are some possibilities. And it has another page because you see it says next at the bottom. When you go to one of the records, you see this. You have a biography of the composer, and it tells you where to go for more. And then you have all the songs that we have. By the way, these are the songs in my personal collection. So there are about 3,000 of them currently. I haven't had time to add the ones that are coming in. That's going to happen this summer. But when you come to a record, it tells you there's your range. Here's the tempo for you. If you say, you know what, I need a faster song, you go to another song. One of the things that we're hoping to do in phase 2 is you'll see the first page of a score. And in the instance of someone like Margaret Bonds, because we have handwritten score, and I want students to know what her handwriting looks like, I would probably use the handwritten rather than the computer score, because that computer score sort of depersonalizes and doesn't really let you see the character of how she wrote. Then we're going to put a sound clip, which is a way that I hope that we're going to work with the Hampsong Foundation to begin to record all of these songs with Michigan students and faculty. So there's much work that is left. We already have someone is interested in adding the cello repertoire. He's already collected it. That's another step. The instrumental repertoire. Eugene Rogers here wants to add the choral repertoire. Someone's asked about the piano repertoire. We have it. We just don't have the manpower. So that's our next steps, is we need to get some grant funding and begin to hire people to do these parts of the database, the next steps of it. Lastly, I want to end with the future. So,
That's nice.
it is, it's lovely this year, but okay, let's see if it'll let me go to the future. So work to do. Among the things that have been noted for me are that we need an anthology of operatic arias. Our competition requires it, and people can't find that, and they keep saying, did African Americans write any operatic arias? Yes, they wrote lots. Scholarly work on African American operas that include a bibliography of existing operas. Naomi, she and I were going to be talking about that. Index listing of composers' papers and archives, because they are now being split up. People like Alvin Singleton in Atlanta just told me he put his papers at Columbia University, whereas William Dawson, who's in Atlanta, his papers are at Emory. So that is becoming an issue of where exactly are these and how do we find them to encourage the scholarship. More stages of the database, as I explained, and expansion to include other instruments. There's lots more that needs to be done. As we all know, the operative word is what? Money. And so I would like to say, in the words of Robert Frost, there's many things that can be done and miles to go before any of us sleep, particularly me. So I would like to leave you with a little bit of a piece. Stopping by Woods on a, I guess it went to sleep. Come back.
You could sing it.
Oh, not after being on the plane.
What happened? I'm sorry.
What if
We
can
tested
back-
it beforehand.
It was here. Huh?
Well, why don't we just invite our next singer to come up and sing?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
I want them to rip this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know. Can we back out of the thing and come back?
Yep.
Back out real quick. No, back out. Oh. Back out of the whole presentation. Escape. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then where's your screen?
It's thinking.
Okay. It was there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know what happened.
It's on YouTube.
You can do that if you want.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah.
Is your YouTube recording?
Should be.
Put it in. Okay. Stop it by words. Who we stop? And maybe not. Oh, good heavens.
Is that it?
That's holds fast to drink. Sympathy. It's the same dress, but it's the same concept.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll pull it up if I do. If I pull up one from that. Like that. If I pull that up, will it pull the other one up? Nah, it's not pulling it up. You can look on YouTube somewhere. It is there. What's the name of it? It's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Robert Frost. It's a beautiful setting by Margaret Bonds. I wanted you to hear that. But instead, we have a wonderful performance of Leslie Adams by Amber Merritt. Thank you.
That was fantastic. I just wanted to invite the members of our panel to come on up. So as people are coming up, I will explain a little bit more after. We're just looking to have a conversation about the possibilities of this partnership, about the possibilities of bringing art song performance and research together. And I've basically asked all the cool people who were gullible enough to say yes to join me up here. I've asked each person to prepare a short statement just to share their observations about the possibility for art song research, the importance of art song in our lives, and we will see it from there.
Say something? Well, I just wanted to put the policy. You try this, everybody's got something to say. I said to Christie when I walked up here, and by the way, just to welcome you again on the net, wherever you are, and listening. And I'm sure we're going to keep this up for a while, aren't we? So you can tell people that would like to watch it or review it. They will be online for quite some time to be able to watch this wonderful afternoon. It's pretty emotional on some level for me because I'm obviously very passionate about this subject, and just to finally meet so many colleagues that I have only known their names and admired their work, and been extremely grateful that I could in some way help them do what they do. It's a very exciting afternoon. You remember one of the first plates with Francis Hopkinson? What you didn't put on there, and I would recommend adding, is that the letter he wrote to Washington was in 1759. This is 17 years before he signed, which means, very interesting, I don't know if there's an academic, a U.S. scholar here, but I don't know when the first time the phrase United States became vernacular. But 1759, Francis Hopkinson is writing about being evidence of the United States in an artistic endeavor. That's citizenship. That's fantastic. That's really overwhelming in so many ways. Where my passion came from are certain things like that we would call trivia, but it just seems to me, or it seemed to me from the get-go, so obvious that the arts of any culture are the evidence of those lives lived. It's not something you get into. It's something you learn from. And I've enjoyed a very public life and performances, and I love speaking to the audience and saying, if you have to get into the arts, somebody stole them from you in the first place. You know, it's a blueprint of who we are. In America, of course, it's a very complex conversation. It's a brilliant and beautiful conversation. And our goal, in my opinion, for our conversation, is to be talking about song as evidence of who we are as Americans, capital A, big block word American, which is as much an ideal as it is a place, as it is an adjective. So many European composers thought of themselves as Americans, and they never made it to this soil. Schubert being one of them. He loved thinking of himself as an American. He died while reading the Leatherstocking Tales. He wrote Gretchen am Spinnrade and Erlkönig literally in the same month as Francis Scott Key was imprisoned in a boat, hoping that Baltimore would live and that Fort Henry would survive. Can you imagine? You know, these things aren't accidents. Poets don't just sit under trees and have ideas fall into their heads like bad apples. They come from seething, surging, alive collections of thoughts. What we call in German the Gedankengut. A gut is like a warehouse. Gedanken are thoughts. Out of this collective comes a synthesis, an attempt to say something incredibly profound because it remains in a kind of language that protects the ambiguousness of it, i.e., it's a metaphor of the experience. The composer digests this text and this context of the poetry endlessly, and out of that comes piecemeal, or maybe sometimes right on the spot, some sort of musical identity that somehow echoes an emotional response to that. Again, in the last analysis, a metaphor of the experience. So what is song, in my opinion? Song, for me, is making audible some defined use of metaphor of human existence. It's not about standing up here. It's about all of us listening to who has been before us, imagining a better future for all of us. Song isn't something to get into. It is the great blueprint of who we are in whatever epoch and whatever culture we've come from. What I said earlier, what I meant, the goal in song, an American song, in my opinion, is to talk about American song. And yes, the first drill down may very well be African American, but it's not an African American song, it's an American song. It comes from that part of our culture. And if there was a more important canon that has been more egregiously neglected over the last 250 years, somebody tell me what it is. There isn't one. There is no more greater informing canon of who we are as Americans to celebrate today, and God bless you all for what you're doing, than the African American canon. And right next to that is the women's creativity in this country. We've been horribly short-sighted and chauvinistic, despite this amazing liberal arts education tradition that we have in this country. And if I may just be negative for 2 seconds, we damn well better wake up amongst ourselves, because there are forces very active and very powerful, hoping to limit and water down the great liberal arts education history and tradition we have in this country. I think that we in the arts can help slow that down. Sing, sing, sing. It's hard to ignore somebody singing. So, somebody else talk.
Oh boy. Well, I think that...
You should probably introduce yourself, George.
I'm sorry.
I should have.
No, George Shirley.
Oh yeah, I'm Tom Hampson.
Emeritus professor of voice in the School of Music. A few years ago, I was asked to write an essay in a book called Singing, the Timeless Muse. Essays on the human voice, singing, and spirituality, compiled by Darlene Wise. And in the first paragraph of what I wrote, I'll share with you. Anthropologist Stephen Mythen's thought-provoking treatise, The Singing Neanderthals, posits the mode of verbal expression predating the formation of words in primitive human society to be musical. Mythen's work refutes fellow anthropologist Steven Pinker's theory that music is an appendage of speech, convincingly arguing the contrary. Music and song is expression of the desire to say something. And we tend to forget that when we talk about written composition of songs. Babies who have no words make sounds when they're trying to express themselves that are arguably musical. And it's up to the parents to translate what that musical moan or groan or phrase is. But they're trying to say something. And it's interesting that when we grow up and acquire the language of our society, the babies put in a room can all communicate with each other, making the same kinds of sounds. They respond. But it's only after we learn how to speak our languages that we can no longer communicate with each other. Music is the one way that we can continue to communicate with each other. Once a composition is written, no one owns it. It's out there for everyone to grasp and to respond to, because music goes to the core of the soul the way spoken words by themselves cannot. When Congress first tried to pull the rug out from under the National Endowment for the Arts a number of years ago, well, actually, let me go back. When 9/11 happened, and I saw people, congresspersons standing on the steps singing patriotic songs, I wanted to go up to those who had voted against supporting the NEA and ask, why are you singing? What does it mean for you at this moment to give voice in a singing manner to your emotions? And if you can understand that, why can't you understand the need for an organization that supports that? Why can't you understand when the budget gets tight? Why do you say that, well, the arts are the first to go, especially music, because that's just a frill? And you're standing here, moved to express yourself through song. You may be singing flat, but who cares? You're doing something that is the natural way for the human animal to express itself. The power of song is incredible, and we tend to push that aside. And one other little thing, and I'll shut up. I went to church this morning, and the minister started her sermon with it was a report about a little boy in Atlanta who, years ago, this was in 2014, he was kidnapped from his front lawn, thrown into a car, and the car drove away. His name was Willie Myrick, and he started to sing a gospel song called Every Praise at the top of his voice. And the kidnapper started cursing the kid and telling me, shut up, shut up. But the kid wouldn't do it. He kept singing. Finally, the guy stopped the car and kicked him out. So, understanding the power of song, how it can reach into the hearts of people who need to be moved. Imagine how it would be if the senators and the congresspersons sang to each other rather than yell and shout and spew invective. Song is the language. It is our first language. It is a language that we need to continue to understand the power of and to support in our schools, everywhere, and understand what it means to sing to someone and reach inside of their souls.
My name is Willis Patterson. I'm an emeritus professor of voice here at the University of Michigan, School of Music and Theater and Dance. came to Ann Arbor in 1930 through the doors of the University of Michigan Hospital, where I was born. I lived on the north side of Ann Arbor for my first 18 years, and I prepared a fairly sizable presentation of words about my acquaintanceship with song. I'm going to excerpt it and read to you a few passages from it, only because if I were to extemporize, we'd never get out of here. My interactions with songs began as an 8 or 9-year-old listening with my mother to romantic ballads and other songs during our efforts to divert our discomforts caused by inadequate food, clothing, and living space. For me, my brothers and sisters, we numbered a total of 8, and for my mother and my stepfather. This was during the Depression days of the early 30s on the north side of Ann Arbor and in a neighborhood inhabited mostly by African Americans. Our singing of these romantic ballads, along with such artists as Paul Robeson, Mahalia Jackson, Bing Crosby, Marian Anderson, Kate Smith, Lawrence Tibbett, among many others, enabled my mother, who had a very lovely soprano voice, and several of my siblings, who also had very fine vocal sounds, to find much needed sweet relief from the pangs of hunger and other discomforts caused by the vicissitudes of the Depression-era living, and enabled us to escape into moments of sweet bursts of happiness. They also enabled us to realize that several of us could make vocal sounds that were, at least to our ears, as pleasant as those we heard over the radio. This made me feel a sense of relief and hope that I might one day be able to provide means of permanent, sustained relief and much needed confidence from those bitter, debilitating days of feeling worthlessness and self-pity by searching for a way to elevate my singing abilities to the level of those whose ability I so admired as they came to me over the airways. It was not only the imagination stimulating lyrics and the lovely vocal sounds that caused this temporary euphoria, but also the sweet, stimulating sounds of the voices I was listening to, and that I felt were potentially present in my own vocal instrument. This set me on the path to eventually enrolling in the University of Michigan School of Music in voice performance. I found that each of the genres of art songs that I brought the same feeling of pleasantness and beauty in the marriage of lyrics, melody, rhythm, and harmony that I had initially found in the songs I'd listened to with my mother, and that I had experienced my own singing of spirituals and jazz, ballads, and other vocal works, to which I applied my vocal abilities during my years of growth and singing and performance. Lacking in these musical experiences was the exposure to and knowledge of art songs composed by African Americans. It took the questioning of a newspaper review in the Badische Zeitung in Germany, during which I had performed an entire concert of German, French, and Italian songs with no spirituals or American art songs, for an appreciative German audience, which was anxious to hear songs that reflected my heritage. Following a period of time feeling that I had been unfairly rebuffed because of my being an African American singer, I thought about the matter and decided I needed to address the issue head on. My European performances had come on the heels of teaching 2 jobs in HBCUs, one in Louisiana and one in Virginia, where I became well acquainted with the colleagues to whom I could pose the question of where I might find song repertoire composed by African American composers. This resulted in my becoming the compiler and the editor of 2 collections of art songs and one of spirituals that total more than 116 African American songs. This comprises only a small sampling of the art songs that have been produced by such composers. I know this because this total is only a small portion of such songs which I have in my own private collection. They are filled with lovely, creative, and challenging songs. They lack only the inclusion into the performance and teaching repertory of singing teachers and their students.
It's really a joy to be up here and with such a wonderful panel. I'm learning so much. My name is Naomi Andre, and I'm a musicologist, and I've had the pleasure of working with several people up here, including Louise Toppin, as we're trying to put more of these, sort of change the historiography of making it possible to find African American and other Black, Caribbean, with the African diaspora music in college textbooks, in articles, just making it more available. I want to basically talk for just a couple of minutes about 2 major points, and that is song and the issue of belonging and community. We've talked about democracy and citizenship, and yet I think there's an element of, if you see yourself reflected somewhere else, it means so much for your belonging. Now, we see ourselves in so many different ways. I'm an opera scholar, and so there are a lot of things I see on the opera stage that feel so real, even in a hyper-extended way, and I dare say I'm not the only one. When Germont is talking to Violetta and he begins to change when she's like in the 2nd act, you can't talk to me this way in my home. Germont is savvy. He's not a 2-dimensional character. He basically realizes, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to come up with other arguments. And we see ourselves thinking on our feet in, through opera, we can be Violetta, we can be Germont, all of these things. I'm not a 19th century woman, I'm not a 19th century man from Italy, and yet these things, they make us feel connected. It's exceptionally important when we can see somebody like ourselves walking around in a body that looks like us, to see embodied experience up on the stage, up in the classroom, up on the pulpit, in different places where we're like, wait, I can do this. Maybe this is something that includes my voice. Here are songs that were written by somebody else who is Latinx, or somebody else who's African American. What does it mean to be the first native United States person? I can't remember the exact terms, but where are the indigenous Americans who were here, who were obviously making music, because as we've established, everybody makes music. We just don't have it written down. So this idea of community and belonging is so important, and I want it to cross just, I need to see myself and another Black woman, to I can see the power and the humanity. The Harlem Renaissance is one of my favorite times to, literature to read and the music, but also this concept that I found out reading Alain Locke's The New Negro and other writings that wasn't taught to me, that they included information about the arts, and Langston Hughes, some of his best-known poetry, The Weary Blues and I Too Sing America, that this collection wasn't just about sociology or about political essays, but it had the arts in there because that's how we are human. And in this first generation for the writers of the New Negro, that anthology that was published in 1925, they're born free, or most of them were. And how do we show ourselves as full citizens, as real people? Well, we'll show that we feel too, that we are not just chattel, that we actually have feelings, that you can feel also. So reaching across, there's something so powerful. I think everybody will agree that a song that emanates out of our body, you just need yourself, and you sing it. There's that original language that babies sing and babble, that other people, when you're, and I'm gonna close now with my daughter, who luckily isn't here, she's 11, and every time I mention her, it's like way unfair. She gets mad at me. I used to be a superstar or a superhero, but now she just rolls her eyes. But she is really, it's been amazing. Oh, you know that age.
Been there, done that.
Oh, my Lord. But I love her deeply. So her little, and I can't say that, her school friends would say, you know, Sophia, her name, is always singing. She's singing in the bathroom, she's singing, and I love the fact that she has that ownership, that she's able to just not be self-conscious, at least not yet, and is able to sing. I say, hey, Seth, do you want to sing in a choir? No. But you're always singing. And she's like, yeah, that's for me. And I'm like, okay, that's good. So I'm sitting down at breakfast with her, and she says, where do we go when we fall asleep? And she says a few other lines like this, and I'm like, wow. You know, 11 years old, she's thinking all this stuff. Well, she's a huge Billie Eilish fan. And it turns out that those are the words of lyrics for Billie Eilish songs. And I thought, you go, little girl. You are taking a song and instead of singing it, and it's, you know, a pretty creepy, wonderful, lovely song, she's saying it as though this is part of her words. She's feeling a little belonging here. So I'm just constantly reminded. I see it in my students. I see it in my 11-year-old. There's something about a belonging and a sense of, this can be my voice too, and as I'm learning, I can take new voices. It is so important that we provide a wide range of voices that they can try, so we all can try different ones on. Thank you.
Well done.
My name is Stanford Olson. I'm a professor of voice and oratorial repertoire here at the University of Michigan. And we've heard a great deal about the scholarship and the theory and the idea. I would like to talk a little bit about the place where the rubber hits the road, and that's in the performance. And to do so, I would share with you a short story, a tale of two singers, if you will. I joined the faculty here about 8 years ago and came to the realization very quickly that there was an entire canon of song literature about which I knew almost nothing. And so I did what every smart student does. I took the class. I audited the survey of our African American art song literature that was taught that year by my colleagues, Dr. Scott Piper and Dr. Caroline Helton. And I started to learn about this repertoire. And in the course of my work, I do a lot of clinics and master classes. And I was approached by another university, a very exclusive university with a reputation for affluence and a narrow segment of the population, to come and do a master class about Bach. And I was excited to do that. And they said, we would love to have you do another class on a topic of your choosing. And knowing very little, but something more than I had known before, I said, I think African American art song is a great thing for us to discuss. And there was a kind of silence at the end of the phone. And then my colleague said, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. And so I took your first volume of songs and sent it to this university and said, give a song to all your students, pick 4, and we'll discuss them. And then I cribbed and studied like a maniac. And one of the songs we got there was, in fact, a song that I knew well and had sung myself, and that was Margaret Bond's setting of Langston Hughes' Minstrel Man. And it's a beautiful poem that doesn't necessarily need to be viewed through the lens of the civil rights movement. It reads in part, "Because my mouth is wide with laughter, and my throat is deep with song, you do not think I suffer after I've held my pain so long? Sorry." A young teenaged woman from a very affluent and privileged background sang this song in a master class, and she had us all in tears. It was beautiful. It was personal. It was moving. It was, it provoked and confronted us. And when she was finished, I said to her, "It's a wonderful performance. What does this song mean?" And then she told me that she had a very personal vision about a very personal story regarding personal loss that was absolutely true and real and had nothing to do with the period or the man who'd written this text or the woman who chose to set it. A few months later, I came back to the University of Michigan. Well, actually, I came back the next week, but a few months later, I went to a recital from 3 young women, and the recital was titled, "Call Me By My Name." And in the same program was a performance of this same beautiful song. And it was so angry, and so bitter, and so confrontational that I was very uncomfortable. I felt like I had been invited to see somebody in the dark recesses of the night in a personal way that maybe was something to which I shouldn't have been invited. And it was moving, and it was beautiful, and it had many of us in tears. And afterwards, I took the chance to speak to this artist, and in a kind of tentative way said, "Wow, that was a really interesting reading of the song. It seemed like there was a lot of anger there." And then this young woman described to me an experience in which she and her 2 colleagues had sat in a classroom for a year. And at the end of the year, the teacher still couldn't remember which one went by which name. So that happens. Classes are big, teachers are busy. I wouldn't suggest that the teacher in question was not paying attention or that she wasn't invested in the education of this individual. But in point of fact, the 3 young women were 3 young African-American women who looked nothing like each other in height or build or color. How thankful I am to have been confronted and accused as an audience member, as an educator, and perhaps as a performer, of not seeing. When I was a young man, first starting my studies, I read a quote by an American sculptor named Avard Fairbanks, who wrote, "Art," and we can substitute song or music, "can uplift and bring understanding to the downtrodden, recognize the finer qualities of man in all stations of life, and cause people to believe that their own kind of living is worthwhile." In other words, as we invest in that literature of the American tradition, our way of living, our freedoms, we lift, we recognize, we celebrate our differences, we invite others to learn who we are, and we can smooth out some of those rough edges and see the things that we have in common. Thank you.
had a series of profound statements really about the power of song in people's lives. And I want to have a couple questions from the audience if you have them, but I just wanted to give anybody on the panel a chance to reflect on what are you sort of most excited about with the sort of conversation we've had today, or the potential of this partnership? Where do you hope to see this go? What would you like to see happen?
I would. It was a very powerful statement from Hampson, which I think focuses on the fact that any performance, whether it be musical, dramatic, whatever, any performance has got to reflect the truth of human existence. And to the extent that it does, it should work to open the consciousness of the listener to the fact that, what's the saying, but for the grace of God go I. Or, yeah, that's a path that I've traveled. I may look different than this individual who's performing, but I recognize that this is something that I understand as well. Maybe I haven't had the same exact experiences in life that this person has, but I've had experiences that make me vibrate in the same way. So what does it mean? That no matter what the outside, you can't tell the book by its cover. That we all have been given an endowment, a conception that governs how we respond to life. And we hurt, we have joy, so that it doesn't matter if, you know, I was listening to the Porgy and Bess broadcast from the other day. Normally, at the end of the performance, you hear, bravo, bravi, bravi, bravissimo, bravo, so forth. And at the end of this performance, I heard a few of those, but I heard, woo, woo, woo. That said to me, well, there is possibly a different group of folks sitting there who probably have never been to the Metropolitan Opera before, but they are responding from their solar plexus with the feeling of what a performance. And hopefully they'll say, well, okay, I can relate to that. We talked about relating. Seeing someone on stage that is like us, that is reflecting a human experience that we all have. So maybe they'll say, well, I'd like to come back again. And maybe I can enjoy that from somebody who doesn't look like me. Music, song has the way of doing that. Especially when we recognize the fact that the performers and the creators, we're all human. We have the same kinds of experiences. We haven't been enslaved physically. Quite often you look into your background and you can say, well, yeah, I've been enslaved to something that I'm not happy with, but I can't seem to break it. The human experience is the same in music. And the arts reflect that at their best.
Well done, John.
I think one of the things I'm sort of most excited about with this partnership that really, for me, reflects the power of the conversation we've had today is that it reconnects the study of music and the sort of professional preparation that I think for those of us feels, you know, in like a whirlwind and a race in so many ways to get through the term, to have us take a step back and just to realize, you know, what motivated us to get into this before is that primal cry, that music of communication, that sort of urge for human belonging and connection. And I think if there's anything I really hope from this is that we all, as we go through this, our students, our faculty, and people, from the public who are coming and joining us on this journey, and K-12 students really start to realize the importance of the arts just to speak to us as people and to give us an opportunity to figure out who we are and where we belong and who we can connect with and to find ourselves and find our people and sort of invent that community as we go through it. So for me, there's a way in which the music we've been talking about today is sort of at a more sort of base level than often the conversation that we have in preparing for the next exam or the next jury, and just reminds us why we're here.
Very exciting, and as you say, it's fun to sit up here and listen and learn, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to be part of this conversation on so many levels, and this partnership, I hope, is the beginning of a national dialogue on a curriculum level. I love what you said about community and about identity. That we have this wonderful, I do these concerts, and I've written a couple of scripts for them and so forth, and there's a lot of quotes and things that keep floating in my mind. Stan, I'm just so glad you get emotional, because I can hardly quote poetry public without getting teary and crazy and all that kind of stuff. So I've stood next to this man on stage. I know the heart that this is coming from. It's fantastic. But we have a couple of important national mottos. In God we trust. Well, duh. But I think the one that just says it all is E pluribus unum. The community forged by the many, myriad, different, unique, justified in and of themselves. This community is the one. And when that community sings our songs, each other's songs, white songs, black songs, brown songs, yellow songs, we identify a community that transcends the individualism. It builds a sense of understanding. It's what Maya Angelou was trying to say when she said, "My friends, we are more alike than we are unalike." And when we sing, we know that in our hearts. And I think that's the most important thing. This country has been unbelievably creative in its short history. This is not about finger pointing. This is not about just intellectualism. This is about the celebration of the community called America. That's what it's all about.
I believe we have one more song to wrap up our conversation. The panel will head down to the seats. We'll invite Helton to join.
Aren't you sweet?
Got her name.
Since there's a little bit of time, but if you do have questions and you want to talk to me afterward, we'll be around for a few minutes. But I want to give Helton an opportunity, and Lydia, to close our symposium with a song. Venture. Thanks to Thomas Hampson, thanks to Christie from the Hampsong Foundation for being here, inspiring this conversation. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock in Stamps, will be a masterclass featuring 4 more of the amazing students who you've heard today, and thanks to Stephen West and Scott Piper and really our whole voice faculty and student group just for contributing to this. The music really is why we're here, and it means so much to have them be part of this. So thank you very much, and have a great evening.